Okay. We are live in the studio. Bradley Morris. Yeah.
On the beatbox and hand fires. That's right. That's how we roll on E-Course Adventures Live, the show where we take you behind the scenes with world-class teachers and experts and help you to craft the greatest, most immersive, creative, engaging, highly effective, and profitable online courses that you can possibly dream up.
Heck yeah.
So,
What he said.
subscribe and never miss a show.
Yeah.
Don't you know?
Don't you know? Welcome, everybody. This is, which episode are we on today?
15.
15.
Woo!
Nice. We got Pat Johnson on the line. Super stoked to chat with her. She kind of rose to the top of Toastmasters International.
And Toastmasters is kind of a big deal. It's
It's a big deal.
like over 115 countries around the world. And there's over 300,000 active members. There's probably a chapter in your area, even little tiny Salt Spring Island.
You know, and that's a big thing too, when you're getting into e-courses, getting from the camera, getting used to being in front of people and speaking what you do effectively. So can't wait to chat with her.
It's going to be a really juicy conversation that's going to help you understand more about what it takes to speak your message and lead with confidence in your industry. And this is what we're all doing. This is why we're all creating these types of courses, because we all want to step into the spotlight with our message and in our industry to create big ripples.
Big ripples.
Big ripples.
Right
The world
after
needs
this.
us.
Ripples.
Blair Deeney. Ripples. Speaking of
Yeah.
ripples, what ripples are you making in your life? What have you been up to lately?
Oh, I had a mental breakdown last week.
Yay!
Yay, mental breakdown. You know you're doing a good job when, right? Just too much computer time.
Oh.
You know, and that's a big part of finding the balance.
Yeah.
So I think that was more of a splash, if maybe a friggin' tsunami than just a ripple.
Oh,
but
buddy. We're here for you.
Yeah.
Everybody send Blair a love letter and let him know how much his work means to you.
But you know, I have the tools, and it feels good to be back. Love being on the show, and
What did you do for therapy?
I made beeswax candles.
Wow.
I know.
Digital ones?
No. It's, I realize I make everything in the digital world, whether it's these e-courses and, music, everything's digital. So I was like, what? I need to do something that is completely on the physical level.
Wow.
And
Let's
beeswax
get
candles
physical,
was so good.
physical.
Yeah.
Blair's getting physical with the candles.
Yeah.
That sounds
happened.
fun.
How about you?
You look more cheery. First professional golf tournament win ever.
Ooh.
Yeah, played in a two-man tournament on Sunday, and my dad was out west here, and he came and caddied for me, and it was a tied for first.
So
and
hold on.
at the
So
same,
it's a two-man tournament, and you both tied.
no. So it was.
I
Sorry,
don't
it was
know how much a win that is.
It was each team had two people on it. So I was with my buddy Isaac, who I teach a lot of workshops with, and
Right.
him and I were on a team. And it was a tied for first, so it wasn't an outright first. And then we did a 3-hole playoff, and the final hole was in the dark. Like, they
Wow.
literally brought out the tractors that mow the greens. And there's people gathered around the green, drunk people, and they were all singing "O Canada" as we teed off on this hole. And I stuffed one to 8 feet, and their guy had a 25-footer. And it was, it was pretty awesome. And then their guy freaking makes the 25-footer in the dark that was like this downhill curler, and I missed the 8-footer, and Isaac missed the 8-footer. So we actually came second, but I'm counting as a tied for first because that feels better than saying I lost in a playoff and came second. So
just denial.
Denial, but it was pretty awesome. And then I actually went to a funeral yesterday with my dad. My aunt passed away, and she was one of the most courageous and inspiring people that I've had the pleasure to have in my life. She was in a hospital bed for the last 15 years.
Wow.
And she had a really rough hand dealt to her.
So she's in a better place.
She's in a better place. And,
Yeah.
you know, even in the 15 years, because her and I spent a lot of time together over the years, I never heard her complain once. Never heard her complain about her pain. I never heard her complain about her situation. That she was just a beautiful light in the world. So I'm just really grateful, you know, out of all the people through all of my crazy entrepreneurial adventures, she was always the one who always believed in me. It didn't matter if I was making super offensive t-shirts online or teaching meditation or
Where can we get those t-shirts? Are they still available?
I burned them all in a bonfire.
Yeah.
They now live in the atmosphere.
Yeah, maybe we should start wearing super offensive t-shirts when we get our ratings a little higher.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I don't think it'll work very well.
No?
I don't think this is
Okay.
the right audience for that. So yeah, that's been my life.
It's been a full week.
It's been a lot of roller coastering. Some good highs, some good lows.
It seems to be a theme for and a metaphor for just entrepreneurialism in general, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely a roller
We've been
coaster.
up and down. Our website is getting crafted. It's looking really
It's
nice.
looking beautiful.
Ups
It's
and downs.
nice to be working with experts on that.
I know, right? Experts rock.
Yeah.
Bunch of courses getting Survive the Storms coming
We're
together.
shooting the rest. So Chris and his media team over in Ontario are shooting the rest of their stuff this week, and we're shooting the rest of our stuff, which means we'll be going into post-production mode. And Survive the Storm, the goal is like by mid-November, all of you out there will get to go through Survive the Storm. So that's exciting. I mean, this course is going to be a flagship course on how to create themified learning experiences outside of how to create courses and how to market courses and how to sell courses. So we're pretty darn stoked. And the new platform will be live in 2 weeks max.
So
That's
just
a lot.
because we've got Pat Johnson today, and we're going to be talking about speaking a lot.
Oh, before we get to that,
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just going to interrupt that thought. So last week, if you're on our email list, you would have got an email saying, we're putting a lot of money into our new website here, and we would like to make sure we get our messaging correct. Could you please fill out our survey, and we'll happily pay you $100 and offer you some free coaching to 2 people. And it was the best response ever from our list for surveys, and we've sent out quite a few over the years. So if you're looking to get a good response from your surveys, offer people cash.
It seems to be working.
Yeah, it works really well. So we have 2 big winners, and we went to randomnumbergenerator.com. I found that on Google. And the random folks that won $100 each, cash, and an hour of coaching with Blair Deeney and I. Number 1, Jessica Antonelli. Hey!
Congratulations, Jessica.
And Jessica's actually created a few things on the mountain. She's created the Bad Artist, which is a course that she's redoing right now again. It went from mini course to an actual course. And How to Draw Anything, which was her 10 steps to drawing anything. And so Jessica, we're so stoked to get to work with you. It's going to be so fun. And drum roll for our second winner, Sarah McCann.
Hey,
Yeah.
Sarah.
So Sarah is also another student in the great ecourseadventure.com. And her company is called Mind Tricks, which is a play on the Matrix. And the course she's building right now is called Escape from Nicotraz, where she is going to help you escape from your smoking addiction. Hallelujah. Her course is wicked. And as far as I know, Sarah must be like coming down the final stretch, finding the light at the end of the tunnel, where she's actually going to be launching her course really soon. So hopefully we can offer our services in a good way to you too, Sarah. We'll be in touch.
Sarah, that's sweet. Yeah.
Yay.
Nice.
We love working with people. And if you want coaching, reach out to us and we can set that up as well. We love helping people to just bring their ideas to life and ultimately to create the greatest courses you can imagine. And sometimes it takes a couple of experienced guides like ourselves to just help you have the epiphanies that you need and to help you organize your thoughts and map things out so that you can do it the quickest, fastest, most efficient, and affordable way possible.
Hey. So
That's it.
can I go back to my thought?
Oh yeah, go back to your thought.
Yeah. So since we got Pat Johnson to talk with, around, and we're going to be talking about speaking a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it seems to be one of our things. Being in Toastmasters, that's what Toastmasters is all about. Is getting comfortable with public speaking and getting a lot of really good feedback. I was just curious, where did you get some of your experience? Because that seems to be a natural skill of yours.
Well, actually, funny enough, it kind of in public school back in grades 6, 7, and 8, we had to give speeches. It was a thing that we did, 3 to 5 minute speeches every year. So the first speech I ever gave was on my fourth cousin, Chief George Armstrong, who was
Your cousins at Armstrong?
yeah. Whoa! That just clicked. And he was also a First Nations guy, and he was the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs back in the 60s when they won all those Stanley Cups.
Wow,
Yeah.
cool.
So I did a speech on him.
Nice.
And that was my first ever speech, and I made it to the finals, I think, in like our district. And then the next year I did a speech on bicycle helmets, because the bicycle law helmet just came in, and it was like a super. I remember like the beginning of the speech was like, and I'm biking
From
down
a
a hill,
12-year-old's perspective.
and I hit a pole, and there's blood everywhere, and I black out. Like it was like really, really descriptive, and I made it to the finals again. So
Nice.
I guess it's just been a part of my path, and you know, and then as far as like professionally. Back in 2007, we launched a viral video on YouTube called The Gratitude Dance, and that led to hundreds of speaking events around North America.
Nice.
And then teaching 500 plus workshops and meditation. It's just been like kind of me sharing has been a part of my life since a little kid. And I remember like back in the olden days when we used to have like a big video camera. My buddies and I would make jackass videos in back in high school, and even as a little kid when I was probably like 8 to 10 years old, we were making media and that sort of stuff. It's just been what I do.
It's been one of your things. Now, everyone doesn't have that same sort of path, you know, and that's the one thing that we see often is when people are wanting to create an e-course, they've got some really good information and build a really awesome course, you know, and the what's the word I'm looking for? I could get some. Pat, you need to help me. Pat,
Send him a lifeline here.
Oh my god. Yeah. But you know, they get the all the course material and stuff. But then what we see constantly is stalling in front of the camera and being able to present themselves effectively. And so it's a huge skill. So if you do have a Toastmasters around, highly suggest that.
Yeah, and I'm sure Pat will be able to tell you how helpful it can
so
be for you.
let's get her and save me, Pat. Save
Come
me.
in, Pat.
Pat, are you
there?
Pat?
I'm here.
Pat
Pat
Johnson.
Yay, there she is.
Welcome, Pat. It is wonderful to see you here on eCourse Adventures Live.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here with you.
Now, we were introduced through a mutual friend named Roxanne, who is an amazing globe-trotting woman who's, you know, helping a lot of people around the world. And she seems to know so many incredible human beings. And so anybody that Roxanne introduces me to, I'm always paying attention because she knows so many good people. And so we got to have a short 30-minute conversation a couple weeks ago, which I was really inspired by. And I was like, you are the person we want to have on the show to help our students and all the people that are following our work to be more confident as they're leading their online communities and they're speaking their message out into the world. So we really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I'm curious, how did you get into public speaking?
Well, I took the long circuitous route. So I came, although I'm very young, I came late to the game. And
A late
I
bloomer.
I actually was super shy and didn't have any confidence or self-esteem into my 30s, although I was showing horses and doing things in public, but was really trying to hide for the most of the time, wanting to be quite invisible. So I was actually in a program out of the University of Brandon, Manitoba, and was studying politics. And I was in Ottawa, and at that time was required to introduce one of our senators at one of our events. Well, I didn't sleep all night. I couldn't decide how to address him, whether I stood or whether I sat down, whether I could touch him or shake his hand, what question I would ask or what I would say, how long it had to be. Do I read it? Do I have to just speak without notes? And that kept me going all night long. So the next morning, I showed up to introduce the senator, and it was probably the most embarrassing performance of my entire life. And the poor fellow knew that just by process and the agenda that I was actually attempting to introduce him. So he did eventually take the stage. But after that, one of my colleagues who was in school with me came up and said, "You should try Toastmasters." I had never heard of it before, and I was at that time living in northern Manitoba and thought, the chances of me finding that in the small town where I was from is probably nil. And it didn't really mean anything to me, so I packed it away. And then it was one of those things that haunted me because of the poor performance that I had had. And I kept thinking, I need to fix this. I thought there had to be a fix. And so I eventually, about 9 months later, walked into my first Toastmaster meeting, because there was, in fact, a club in the small town that I lived in
Cool.
northern Manitoba.
Wow. There's quite a few out there, right? How many like chapters or clubs do you know, that statistic at all?
I don't even keep track. We're in 146 countries of the world at the moment.
That's a lot. Yeah.
And so wherever I go, I can find a Toastmaster club. And it's pretty amazing, even in small communities like around BC. I come from Manitoba. Years ago, I moved out to BC from Manitoba. All the small communities there had clubs. And it's pretty amazing, the continents we're on and the work that we're doing and the languages. So that's how I came to actually experience developing some skills. Now, when I was young, when I was about 12, my parents had put me in music. And so I started singing lessons. And as a result of singing lessons, I had the ability to walk out on a stage without passing out. Right?
Step
Which
number
is a really
one.
good thing. And so I knew how to take someone's notes, the notes and the words, and take the score and present it. I had learned that, and that helped me a bit have some presence. But when I got into Toastmasters, I actually sang a number of my first speeches because I was so dependent on having a note related to a word, and having a crescendo here, and having a pianissimo now, and having a fortissimo here. And so I actually would write the musical markings in my first speeches that I wrote, and often set them to music.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Wow.
So
if you want to set
crutches.
if you want to start singing at any point during our show, we highly encourage it.
And I could do some hand fart beatboxing, and we could get a little jingle going here.
Of course.
Yeah, well,
Just if it
that'll be
comes
for
through.
another show.
Okay, we'll save that for round 2.
Yeah, so that's how I started, and I was super scripted for many, many years. Actually wrote out all my speeches word for word and would read. And then I had a woman that came along in my life, and she was Maori descent, and she said to me, "You would be a powerful leader if you get into your heart." And I went, "What does that mean?" And she said, "Let me help you discover that." And so Suzanne, her name was Suzanne, she came to my home, and she spent a weekend with me, and we walked around my home and talked all weekend long. And as we did this, she would say to me, "Oh, now you're in your heart. Oh, you just went back to your head. Oh, you're intellectualizing. Oh, you're in your head." And I found that I was so seldom in my heart. But then what she taught me was the difference. How different it felt when I got out of performance, when I got out of intellectualizing and hiding behind my brilliance, and just wanted to connect with people and have a relationship with them as a speaker. And that made a big difference for me. So that started another huge journey in communication about, probably 15 years ago. And it really changed the trajectory of my path in terms of getting into senior leadership in Toastmasters, senior leadership in my workplace, and just changing how I approached people. They weren't somebody to talk at, but more to connect with and communicate with and relate to them and build a relationship. Even when you stand on a large stage, as you've probably experienced, even on the other side of a camera, it's about, do you connect with the people and how do you connect with them? And that's what keeps us online with you.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's a key component I find when I'm producing these courses, and when we've got a camera staring at us and there's no actual person physically that we're used to just communicating in person. That's what we've been doing since we were born. And then it's how do we connect to that audience on the other side of that lens is a big key. And that's just to have that experience and have that, in our mind. That's a really key point.
Do you have any practices that you would recommend people could do to start creating that deeper heart connection whether they're talking or whether they're making a video or doing a webinar or anything like that?
Yeah, I have a few ideas to share. First of all, one of the things that I love to do, and I do this in my coaching practice, is I have people put their hand over their heart. And just as you might do in preparing for a meditation, is to close your eyes and take a couple of deep breaths and feel yourself sink into your heart.
That feels good.
You can hold your attention to your heart center, and you can actually feel your energy go down there. Can you feel that?
Totally. And I notice when I'm connected in the heart, I notice the vibration of my voice also comes through a different area, that it's not up in my throat when I'm talking like this. It's more just like embodied.
Absolutely. It's so powerful. And it's one of the things that I encourage my clients to get in touch, whatever their practice is, to create a habit and a strong practice to have that they rely on before they present. So whether they're sitting behind a camera and they can't be seen and it's just voiceover, that they've got their hand there and they stay in their heart, and every once in a while they can pause and take some deep breaths to get centered again. But it's really important. And as we train our listening, we can actually hear that voice move back up to our head, right? The resonance changes, the vibration, the connection changes. And so we can have this intellectual discussion and we can have this intellectual argument without saying a word. But it's different. It's almost not understood what's happened when somebody presents from their heart. So I think that's
it's a great practice.
Especially
for all you parents out there that have kids. Like if you're disciplining your kids, just like take a step back and give yourself a timeout before you give them a timeout.
The other thing is the mindset that it's never about the speaker. I think that often as speakers we get into I want to look good and I have to be the best and I can't make any errors and I want to be perfect. And we really get into performance. And again, it's almost like putting a layer of saran wrap between us and the audience.
Right.
And it nothing goes through. I mean, we visually through, but there's no connection. And so it's really to know that it's a dialogue, regardless if they're speaking back to you or not. It is a dialogue with that person. And so it is a two-way conversation, because they've got stuff going on in their head and their heart in response to what you're saying.
Yeah.
So it's really to be conscious of not getting into being perfect and practice.
Yeah.
Just don't make it a performance.
Yeah.
Just leave it in practice and just connect to your heart. Be authentic. Be yourself. Learn to laugh at yourself. Learn to accept your foibles, because they're beautiful.
Yeah.
Right? They're what make us perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Even,
And the other
sorry.
thing I used to do, just a quick tip, and then I'll turn it back to you, is that if you're just speaking to a camera, put up a picture of somebody
Yeah.
that you can speak to, so that you're having a conversation with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we actually have the second monitor behind the camera, so we're able to visually connect. But it's a lot easier just visually seeing you, and to have this conversation feels a lot more realistic, even though we're miles apart, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not far at all.
Just across the pond. Yeah, and something like, for all of the people out there that are making videos, something that we try to do when we're writing our scripts for our video lessons is we try to imagine how the other person is responding to what we're teaching on the other side of the camera, on the other side of the screen. And so we'll try and imagine what their resistance to a specific exercise would be, or what feelings might be brought up through the content that we're teaching. And if we can address those things through the video, then they're going to feel much greater connection with the content that's being taught, and they'll want to continue on with you. But if you just teach them and you leave all of the resistance and whatever might be coming up from them is having to take action with this next exercise, and we don't address that, and we don't intuit what they're going to be experiencing on the other side, then oftentimes that's when they're going to be quitting or running the other way.
Right, losing that connection.
Losing the connection, yeah.
Yeah, I love what you say with the heart as a key component, and it makes me think of a lot of the science that's coming out of Heart Math Institute, and really recognizing that we consider the mind up here, but it's so centered, if not like, what do they say, like 20, 50 times more potent than the vibrations coming out of the brain. And that, so if this intelligence is what we can connect into, then we're doing a good thing. And connecting on a much more holistic level.
Yeah.
I've noticed that in a big way too, even as a musician when I perform. There's a big difference from playing something from memory compared to just playing something from my heart, and the way it comes through. You can tell the difference. Yeah.
That just raises such a beautiful point that is so critical to connecting. And so many people, when they start to present it, whether they're presenting a course or doing a keynote speech or some presentation, that they start to memorize, just as a musician would memorize the music. But the point you made is the difference between playing the notes that you memorize versus internalizing the music and feeling the notes through your whole body, the way the not the conductor, but the composer meant them to be felt, or your interpretation. So I refer to that as memorize versus internalize. And as you could well imagine, I spent many years as an adult educator in a classroom every day, so looking at connecting with people. And my classes were only effective once I internalized the material, and I wasn't worried about how do I set up that next exercise.
Yeah.
What's the lead in for that? What's the transition? How do I complete this exercise to go to this exercise? But it was once it was so internalized that it was seamless for me.
Yeah.
That it became seamless for for the participants to just flow along.
Yeah.
And if there was an interruption, I was totally fine with stopping wherever the interruption was.
Yeah.
Because it didn't have to be, we'll take your questions later.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't on a memorized track. I was internalized and I was with the content.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes us much more effective. And I think that online programming, that becomes so much more important.
Yeah. We tell people, like, if you're going to build online courses, then make sure you're teaching a lot in person, organize groups, set up circles, lead little workshops. Like, it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't even have to be for money. It's just to have that consistent practice of teaching the content and getting real-time feedback, because we learn so much from the real-time feedback that can translate to creating better courses.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gives you such a richness and depth of the content, because you hear everybody's different perspectives. And so often we put on our lenses, right? We come with our specific glasses, and I see the world as yellow, and you're sitting over there seeing it as orange, and somebody else says it's red, and we're going, okay, so we're all confused. We're all blended together. Are we right or wrong?
Yeah.
And very few things are right or wrong.
Yeah.
There's gradients. So I think that's the, one of the beautiful things that we can bring is that flexibility of thought and space for thought and interpretation. Yeah. Wherever we are, whether we're in person or online. And and our word choices can create that environment. So I think there's nothing more helpful than recording yourself. If it's something that your participants are just starting out, is to record themselves and play it back and have some other people listen to it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's actually some of the things that we suggest in our community is, start with a lesson, record it, show it to the peers in the community, get some feedback.
Yeah.
Chances are you're not going to be sharing your first take, your second, maybe even your fifth or sixth, like publicly and selling that. It takes time, right? It's a refinement process.
And a skill development, right? It's not something you can simply read in a book and then perform it.
Yeah.
It's a skill that we build. And so while we're building a skill, just as we learn to ride a bicycle, if we use that simple example, somebody holds us for the first while till we get our balance and we figure out how to manage by ourselves and build that skill. And then we're even have people then telling us not to go too fast or don't turn too sharp. All those guidelines that come along.
Training wheels and the whole works.
Just I'm big on routines, like with golf and life and all these sort of things. So I'm big on creating systems that help us reach our full potential. So I'm just curious, when you have a big speech that you're to give, how do you prepare in the weeks leading up, and how do you prepare in, say, the morning of the actual speech where you're getting ready to step out on the stage?
Wow.
The hot seat, Pat. Put you on the hot seat.
You could have sent me this question ahead of time.
That deserves
you can totally wing it. If there's even if there's just a few things, it's like, I carry around my journal for like the 3 weeks leading up, and I start to make footnotes, and then like, what are just some of the rituals?
Yeah. First of all, when I do keynote speech, keynotes for me are usually about 45, 60 minutes long.
Yeah.
And so when I start preparing for a keynote, I'm usually inspired by something that is very important to me if I'm starting right from scratch. So if it's seeing greatness in others, or the support that we give one another, how we can't do it alone in life, those type of things, or areas of leadership, I start to collect stories because that's what speaking really is about, is telling stories so people can relate to what we tell. Because as they listen to the story, they insert their own experiences in there. So I start and collect stories. I wrote just to give an example, I wrote a speech on a keynote speech and a workshop. I created both out of this by listening to the Canadian tenors sing "Lead with Your Heart." And it was a song that I didn't even realize, but I was walking around, I kept singing it all the time. And then I would come home and I'd put it on this, I'd play it again and again and again. And I just couldn't get enough of it. And I finally sat down and went, what is this? And that's when I went, lead with your heart. That is a leadership presentation I need to do. And so I started gathering the not leadership skills, but the traits of leaders that I felt led with their heart. And started looking at that, and I did some, research and dug around and really held it in my heart for a long time to get what I really wanted to say. And then I worked with my coach at that time to refine some of the ideas, because I needed an objective ear over there to hear what I was digging through. And I'm very verbal, so I sit and I talk things out loud, and then started getting really clear on what the message was and what was the purpose of that story. And so then it was examining each piece to say, did it fit, and how did it fit, or why or why not? And from there started to put it together. So once I got the stories identified that I wanted to illustrate the points, then start and build transitions, just as you would in a program, right? In designing a learning program, I built the transitions, and then I started practicing. And I would read it, what I wrote, and then again, it was that internalized. So it was never memorizing the words, but knowing that each time I got up, my intention was, first of all, to explain why lifelong learning was important as a trait for a heart leader, and how it showed up. And then I told a story. So basically made a point and gave the reason, and then told a story as an example, and then transitioned to another point. So that's how I build it. And then it's a matter of just doing it. And every time I do it, it's different. Yeah. Now, some content works to be built into a workshop as well as a keynote speech. And so with this one, I actually did, and I just kept the same outline and just opened it up for discussion.
Now, for say a 60-minute keynote, if you were to just guess, how much preparation, like how much actual hours of preparation goes into it, and like how many times do you think you run through it until the day it's actually being delivered?
Oh, really hard to estimate.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It depends. A lot of it depends if I've used some of the stories before, because some of life's stories are really represent many things. So some of those have been already slimmed down. I find in stories that people need to learn to take out all the superfluous stuff that's not relevant to the point that they're attempting to make. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, because we as people get very attached to the details. So they start talking about a Tuesday morning, and they looked out the window and the sun was shining and they were feeling so great, and they had just finished eating their cornflakes, and this person walked in and started screaming at them. And I'm going, what did Tuesday morning, sunshine, cornflakes have to do with the story? Like, could we just get there? Yeah. So that's the hard part for people, is to take the stuff out that doesn't matter. And to also get to the point where you realize that it's your life story and you can make it serve your purpose. You don't take an oath that everything is absolutely true. There's some liberty there. Yeah, right. And some people get really hung up on that. And I don't necessarily say it's my life story. I just talk about an experience I had. Yeah. Right. If that's the case. So that's a long process, and I've never tracked the time, nor would I want to. Yeah.
I'm glad you say this, because in our industry, it's a common myth that we can produce world-class courses and presentations over a weekend. And it's something like, for us with our courses, we spend countless hours doing the work that we do to get it to the level that we feel really excited and proud to release it to the world. And so I'm just glad that you're reaffirming this for us.
Oh, people, so many times people come to me and they'll say they want to be a professional speaker. And I'll say, okay, when do you want to start?
Yeah.
Right. And they think that they're going to launch this business in a few months.
Yeah.
And I go, well, you'll be lucky if you have one presentation partially done.
Yeah.
It's because just to get people to write their personal stories, to start and identify that if you had an experience at the Banff School of Music, that there's some relevance to how important it is to have a team in your life, how confidence can destroy your path, or any number of things, right? Like you've got to take an example in your life and say, what are the stories here? And that takes a lot of internal work, unless you've written a book about your life and have gained all that insight already.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then, the day of, there's lots of things that I do the day of, because I'm so, it's really important for me to be super grounded. And it's different for different people. Some people need to get really energized, so they're bouncing around, and I need to
Tony Robbins style.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the opposite. I need to get down in my heart. So I spend quiet time. Just before I go on a stage, I always ask the spirit or the universe that if they have any words or anything that they want to use me for when I'm on the stage, that I'm available and willing. So I've had lots of messages that have come out of my mouth in the middle of a keynote that aren't off track, but are not my words.
Yeah. Not planned, right? This is
No.
not scripted.
And it's the whole shiver from the top of the head to the tip of the toes going, ooh, that was, I don't say, let them know.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. I'll have more of that. So it's quiet time and focus ahead of time, and relinquishing control and the performance, letting go of the performance and just going, I'm good enough. I'm telling my story, and there's no right or wrong. I'm just there to be with the audience. And I guess the largest audience I've probably spoken to at any one time would be about 3,000 people, which isn't large for some people, but in live, I mean.
Yeah.
So,
where was that?
That would have been in some of the international conventions. There would be around 3,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
And out of all the talks that you've given, aside from your first one, what was the scariest talk that you had to give?
Oh, without a doubt, it was a talk that I gave in Southern Africa. I had spoken at an event the night before, and when I was there, I was speaking quite often during the day, so it was very back-to-back presentations, and they were all different. And I came out of a presentation and the night before, and a fellow came up and said, I'd like you to speak to my management team in the morning. Could you come by our corporation? I said, absolutely, I'd love to. So I went to talk to them about the power of the Toastmaster program and the benefits for their employees. And as I got up to leave that meeting, the owner said to me, and I'd like you to speak to some of our employees. And I went, okay. And thinking nothing of it, and walked around the corner out the room, and he opened a door, and I walked into an amphitheater that was full of hundreds of people, all sitting waiting, unbeknownst to me. And I looked at him, and I'm walking out on the stage looking at him as he's going to introduce me. No time, no lead up, nothing. And I looked at him and I said, what? Because I don't know who this audience is. And which is one of the very first things you
sounds like a nightmare for so many people. And they just walked onto this big stage and everyone's waiting, cheering for me.
Sounds like a dream.
Well, it depends who you are, right?
One I wanted to wake up from. And so I'm walking out on the stage, and he's walking with me, and I said, what do you want me to speak on? And he said, what you talked about last night. I didn't have a clue what I'd talked about last night. I was so into fear and looking at all these people in this audience. So that was probably the most frightening, but the biggest growth opportunity I ever had.
Yeah. And how did you he introduces you, you get to the podium. What happened next?
Well, first of all, there was no podium. It was a wide open stage. And I'm just standing there in the middle of the stage. And so I just started telling stories. And I started gauging the response of the audience. And then I started, when I got responses from them on certain things, and I started getting a sense of what they connected to. And I just kept building the speech.
Wow. Nice. And how long was that speech that you were out there for?
I think it was about 45 minutes. It felt like about 4 hours.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Yeah. Wow. And
just had to let go. Just let it be.
Yeah.
What was beautiful, I'm sure, is that all of the experience you'd gained leading up to that moment was preparing you to be able to just step in with a completely blank canvas and face the unknown. It was kind of like the Karate Kid in Master Miyagi is like, you did all of the wax on, wax off and all the previous work, and it was just like, okay, now here you go. Here's your stage.
Round one.
And that was some of my dialogue, is that you've been preparing for this moment for years, right? You have the words that come out of your mouth, and then you have all the internal dialogue up here.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing that you could be thinking and saying like completely opposite things? I've had that before.
Yeah. So it was pretty rampant that day. But, we went out the other side, and I've learned that it's best not to beat myself up after the end of it. I really believe that it was perfect in its imperfections, and it turned out the way it was meant to turn out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a really big thing for people to understand. And I see that time and time again, for whether you're a public speaker or a musician up on stage or whatever it is, and offering something to the public that, most of the time I find the higher the percentage is people beat themselves up. They think they did a poor job in some way, when it's inspiring and it's just beautiful witnessing who they are in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too that, as presenters or instructors or leading online programs, as keynote, as an educator, whatever the case might be, there's nothing more beautiful than silence. And to be comfortable with silence and let people have time to internally process.
Yeah.
I learned this years ago when I was doing classroom instruction, and I would say, okay, here's an exercise. I'll just give you some time. And so maybe I gave them 15 minutes to work on the exercise. But during that exercise, I would keep interrupting with different things I thought about. And finally, one person came to me after and said, would you mind being quiet when you say we're going to have time to think? And I went, I will.
I
will from now on.
Yeah.
So even in the middle of a keynote, I get feedback a lot of how comfortable I am just standing in the middle of the stage saying nothing, because I've made a point and I want them to process it.
Yeah. Now, you do ontological life coaching with people.
Yes.
And you work with people from all walks of life. It says in your bio: entrepreneurs, nurses, writers, artists, government workers, fitness instructors, healthcare advocates, business owners, media, IT specialists, speakers, professors, like a very wide ranging group of people.
Yes.
Could you share a little bit about what ontological life coaching is?
Yes, I'll attempt to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. What is ontological in the first place?
Yeah, ontological is about the beingness of the person. So rather than doing, who we be when we do it.
Ooh, I like that. That's nice.
Yeah. So back to the heart, back to our authentic self. And we have been trained from very young age to have all these automatic ways of being. And so as a result, we live unconsciously. And the style of coaching that I do is about helping people peel those layers back and find their authentic self that they may never have met as an adult, or get rid of those voices in their heads who are their, the authorities from their past, people that told them they couldn't or they weren't good enough, all that programming. So it's a deep level of coaching that is working with people, because I don't do anything other than co-create. So I work in partnership with my clients for them to explore their highest and best. And then if they set a goal to, say, be a world-class speaker, then we look at what the gap is between where we are today and what that goal is, and then work at how their beingness gets them there. And in that, there's also skill development, but a lot of the focus is on beingness. And, again, lots of times we find people want to be something because somebody told them they could be, and they really have no passion for it, or it's not their calling. And so we look at, the essence of a person, who they are at their core, without all the performance and the layers of shoulds and should nots and the rules and regulations, and who they authentically are. We look at the automatic ways of being that are powerful, but also stop people. And that's often our blind spots in life. So somebody that continually fails just before they have a big breakthrough, there's something going on.
Yeah.
And that's where we go. People that sabotage or never have time, or they have all these stories that they carry around. I'm not good enough. I don't have time. I'm not smart enough. I'm too smart.
Yeah.
All those things. So we go there.
I would say the I don't have time is the biggest excuse I hear out of all of the adventurers who are in our community is, I don't have the time. So
time and money.
Pat, how do we deal with this? How do we deal with this I don't have the time excuse that we hear like a million times a year from people?
Yeah. Well, a very simple way of looking at it is to look at priorities, because everybody's got 24/7. So why do you produce so much and why do I produce so little in the same amount of time? And often it's priority, and it's always choice in life. The other thing is to look at how much energy you spend and how much time you spend justifying and collecting evidence that you don't have time.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Oh my.
Yeah, it's a downward spiral, that. And we look at, there's various tools that we look at, but people get overwhelmed because of time.
Yep.
And there's ways of getting out of that. So we look at ways of people just being clearer on what they want to create in their life and gaining focus and confidence and just committing to it. And those words are easy, but it's not always.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Priorities is a good thing. An exercise that I'll often do with new clients is, what are the top 10 things that have been taking up the majority of your time in the last 2 weeks? Write them all down, and then write on a scale of 1 to 10, out of those 10 things, how many hours would you estimate you've spent on those? And then the third step would be, on a scale of 1 to 10, how high are those things on the priority list, and how in alignment are they with what you say you want?
Yeah.
And then oftentimes it's like, oh my God, 5 of these things I could actually get rid of right now because they're totally out of alignment with what I'm saying I'm wanting in my life. And even if one of those things is out of alignment, we can get rid of that. Then maybe we've just gained 10 hours. Oftentimes scrolling Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all the socials, like you would not believe, like I did this survey and people would say they spent like over 500 hours on those media devices in a year. And I was like, well, if you take those out of your life, you just gain 500 hours. And we say it's approximately 100 hours to build a really memorable course that can be profitable. And so that's 5 profitable e-courses people could be making in that year if they just take those away.
Your friends aren't going to miss you that much.
No, they'll call you actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, in ontological coaching, what we do is look at why you're doing that.
Yeah.
Right. And what's that all about? And often it's deflection or fear-driven behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Maybe some
we're
good
afraid of
questions,
doing
I'm
something.
sure. Yeah. I mean, those would be some good questions to be having from you. I can imagine just like, okay, so you're on Facebook. Why? What are you afraid of? Yeah.
Yeah, like often we develop these ways of hiding, and it's nobody's immune from it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got them.
I know a lot of people, including myself, fear of missing out, right?
Yeah.
FOMO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't be a FOMO.
Don't be a FOMO. Yeah. Just fear of missing out there's so many things, right? I'm a big fan of going deep and finding those hidden mystery thorns that kind of cause all those aches and pains, through the emotional body, which then relate to how we are in our physical world.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's what's so powerful. And, it's really magnified as we get up as presenters of any sort, that we become very transparent in front of the audience, whatever the audience is, if we're going to connect.
Yeah.
And so whether it's presenting or coaching or music, whatever it is, it's for us to do the best that we can.
Yeah.
And do the tools and the work to be as clean and as into practice, not performance, and be comfortable with our authentic self, know ourselves, because people see it in us way before we see it in ourselves. Yeah. And they go, oh, here she goes with that story again. Right. And so much of the world, like I listen to the world conversation, and so much of the world is at effect, is a victim. So we see outcries, we see a lot of movements. They're usually in response rather than acting, they're reacting, which to me is victim mentality. So much of our policy or lawmaking or education is in reaction to something else rather than action. So I think that it's sad for me when I look at how much is at effect rather than at cause. Empowered choice. How much is empowered choice would be the other side of that coin.
I love that.
Coming from love, right? Again, fear being the victim, and at the end of that continuum is love, which is empowered choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when are you running for Prime Minister?
Yeah, really soon, I hope. Please, please, Pat, we need you.
Oh, God, help us, Pat. Yeah. Well, that's awesome, Pat. That's wonderful. So are you currently taking new clients, in your coaching, and are you open? Are you busy? What's the status there?
I am open for business. I actually am. I've got 3 openings right now for clients. So just this time of year is a great transition year or time of year when people are looking at what they're doing. It's back to school season. So you get parents once they get their kids off and off to and settled in to their new routine. So yes, I've got 3 openings in my coaching practice at the moment.
Awesome.
And people can contact me if they want information on that. I also do provide a 3-hour consultation so that we can see if it's a fit, because of the nature of the coaching in the program. So
and all of the course creators out there, you are all needing to really step into your power as a speaker and a leader, and to refine your message to the world so that you are actually speaking from your heart with truth and clarity. So I think that's an amazing opportunity. And I've got the website here, patjohnsonspeaks.com. So you can go check out Pat's body of work and learn more and sign up for one of those consultations to have a conversation with Pat and see if this is a good fit.
And that's all online? You do that like over Skype or Zoom? Or?
Yeah, I work with people around the world. So everything's on Zoom or Skype or telephone, whatever's most convenient for my client. Very few of my clients are in person.
Right.
But occasionally they are. It's a different relationship, but yeah.
Amazing.
Well, Pat, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share some of your stories and your experience. This is amazing. And everybody out there, just know everything that you are doing right now for yourself to better yourself, it's all leading towards that day that you step out on stage and you have no idea what you're going to say.
Yeah. Everyone's going to have nightmares tonight now. Oh my God.
The worst is when you step out and you're naked. You're like, oh man, I got to give a speech and I'm naked. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, that old story, imagine the audience naked. Don't do that. Because it's really distracting.
Yeah, it's true.
No kidding, right?
What was I going to say again?
Yeah, that was so insightful. So many key points. I would love to chat with you in the future again, on some other subjects that might come up.
Sure.
There's so many more questions I would love to ask you, but the time has come. So
yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure.
I wish all your listeners a great day and the very best, their highest and best in their life, and to you also. And I'd love to come back anytime that it suits your schedule.
We're going to do that.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you so much, Pat.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks,
Take
Pat.
care.
Bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
That was nice.
That was really nice.
Yeah, I like that heart thing.
I guess we should sing to the heart because it's that time of the show where
What time is that?
we go behind the scenes and show people how did you do that? This week on How Did You Do That, we are going to take you to the forest. And this is another one of our new onboarding videos for the Great E-Course Adventure. And here we are helping you set up your adventure log. Now, Blair, is this a real forest or is this all pretend? Find out in a moment.
Can you tell? Yeah, so this is a nice little video that we just recently created. And I'm going to play that, at least little parts of it, and then we'll chat about how we actually made this come to life.
Dear Adventure Log, this whole e-course adventure business has been such a wild ride. I still think back to the moment we had the idea to build the Great E-Course Adventure and how much creative inspiration we felt in that moment. Never could I have imagined where we'd be today. I'm so grateful for this adventure log that I'm writing in now because it lets me track my creative journey every single time I build a new e-course and start a new project. This has been such a powerful tool for processing my thoughts, fleshing out ideas, and receiving critical creative feedback from our fellow adventurers in this community, as well as inspiring others coming up the mountain behind or beside me. I wish more e-course adventurers would use their adventure log. It's such a game changer. Oh, hey there. How long were you standing there for? I was just writing in my adventure log. I update it at least once or twice a week as we build our courses. It's the best for generating momentum on this wild and creative e-course journey. You know what? I'll stop what I'm doing here and show you how to set up your own adventure log. Come check this out. Now, first things first, you got to make sure you're in the Great E-Course.
Nice.
Okay, so as you see, we wanted to create a way that was both engaging. So we wanted to help you get your adventure log set up. And if you're in the current version of the Great E-Course Adventure, we call this your progress log. And every course on the platform has its own adventure log. So we needed to teach you how to set that up. So I had the idea of me sitting there writing with the feather pen, and I brought this to Blair, and then Blair went like this. You and your ideas. And then he had a breakdown, and then he started making beeswax candles, and this was the result.
Totally, right?
So Blair, how did we do that?
Well, so well, I guess the way it usually starts is finding the appropriate background, because this actually is a green screen production where we had Brad sitting in the studio on a chair with some green fabric. And here, I'm just going to load this up here.
Hey, there's the forest.
Dun, 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 dun. Let's see, does that pop in? Hold on, see if I can make this work. Is it working? There we go.
I see it showing up on YouTube Live.
Yeah, there we go. So that is how we actually shot it. It's pretty, it's pretty hurting actually. We did it really fast and really dirty, and the things that actually made this really challenging for me in post-production was the way that we lit with the lack of proper lighting, because we are still in some transition between the studio we were in before and the new one. So this is kind of
being built right now.
Right. So this is kind of like the cheap and dirty version. And so we got the green screen, we got the lights kind of lighting the background, doing the best we can. Here, I'm going to move my mouse off the screen because there, it's a little easier. You can see that the chair, it kind of works, but there's a lot of shadow.
A whole lot of wrinkle there.
Holy moly. And so that took a lot of time for me to actually keyframe each segment of the shot around, because that looks and comes up as a shadow in the video.
It's a good thing you wrote the book on green screen magic. Eh?
So in here, you would see all the shadow. So what I had to do is cut this out and frame by frame move the actual cutout piece around the arm. So when we were moving,
it's such a game changer.
I mean, right here, like when that arm was moving, and the feather, I had to cut each part of that out around. And if you look really closely, you might be able to see some, but it turned out pretty good.
That turned out amazing. Wow, I had no idea I put him through that.
I know. It took a lot more time than it needed to.
Any wonder you retired to become a beeswax candle maker.
Oh, man. Right? If only, yeah. And that's where I stress, like, getting good equipment, a proper green screen. If I was to do that again, I wouldn't have used a chair. Here, where did I put
we would have
that?
probably got a bench. And in greenscreenmagic.com, we teach you how to cut out yourself in a scene so that you can superimpose you to the background, and how to edit the shadowing and all that sort of stuff. And we teach you to not half-ass it like we did here. What was like a quick and easy idea turned into a lot of way too many hours for Blair.
So and you can see, like, this is what we're using. This is the desk up here as well with here's the microphone that we're using right now. So still getting good audio, and I would cut around Brad here, so that stuff would all be removed. But this backing was really what made it challenging. And had we used a stool or something like that, I wouldn't have had all the shadow to contend with. I considered reshooting, but it, for what it's worth,
It worked great.
it still worked great. And
In
then
the end.
in the end, and what's actually really cool too is, so if you look at the background and the way the lighting is, it's the sun would be quite low because you can see the shadows of the bench here and the trees, the way it's working and coming through. So we put the lights on Brad, so it was a lot more on the left side than on the right to create that similar effect. And then what's really cool here is this shadow.
I love that. When I saw that, I was like, dude, you put in shadow.
Yeah, and again, this is kind of like I said, the quick and dirty version. I could have done a lot more if I went into After Effects, but I didn't feel like it. So this is the Premiere Pro version of it. And what that really is actually just Brad's image as a second layer. And then I mirrored it, and then I turned it on its side.
What?
And then and stretched it out a little bit. So you can see, actually, if you look really close, it's not a perfect shadow because your knee's up here and you're looking the other way.
Interesting. But it doesn't matter because only you know that, Blair. But now all of you know
Everybody
that.
who's watching
Don't
now.
tell your friends.
Yeah. But, it really creates the illusion that there's a shadow, especially when he moves his head. It just adds that little bit to the eye.
Man, I thought that was an After Effects thing you did. So that was in Premiere.
That's all Premiere
What
Pro.
a great little fancy trick you can all learn right there.
I know.
Wow.
So,
Secrets of the pros.
That's how we did that.
How we did it.
Yeah.
And obviously, for everybody out there, like adding some nature background sounds is key to bringing the forest to life.
Yeah,
so
big
doing
time.
that. And then we just did, like, with the mics that we're using right now, we did the voiceover, the voice inside of my head where I'm journaling, and added a feather pen just because it's funny. And then and then you also did like a little pan just to create a little bit of movement so that the scene is more interesting than just a still shot.
Yeah, that's actually a really cool effect as well, to create a little bit of movement. Creates a little more interesting for the viewer.
Yeah.
So when I'm playing that here, you can see it's just slowly moving in. It's creating almost a sentimental effect. Nice and slow. And the way we do that in Premiere Pro is I get all my editing for the scene the way I like it. Then I nest it all into one clip.
Yeah.
And put that nest into a new sequence, and then apply an overall panning or like a slow zoom onto that nest. So therefore, I'm not trying to make everything zoom at once. It's just like I'm going to it's almost like a render. So you could do that too, actually. You could render it all down into your pre-final rendering without that last kind of zoom going in, and then bring it back into your editor and add that and apply that little faint zoom.
Yeah. And for newbies, if you don't know what rendering is, just Google search it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. It's just like mixing it all down into a final file.
Yeah.
But yeah, I use the nesting feature for that, I use that quite often actually for a lot of things in Premiere.
Well, this is great. For everybody out there, you've learned a few things on how to make things more real when using your green screen. Obviously, lighting and a smooth green screen are super key. That if you want to make yourself sit on a bench, you could just find a bench around your house and throw a green fabric over it, and presto, you've got me sitting on a bench here. I love the mirroring effect with the shadow. You've got the nature sounds, the voiceover, the little zoom effect. There's so many things that we did in that one little tiny, like 30-second scene that all bring that forest to life. So hopefully you learned something there, and we would love to see your green screen videos. So post them in the community. And if you're not in the Great E-Course Adventure, then you should come try our free trial, because it's free and it's a trial.
And it's fun.
And you can see if you like us. If you like the show, you'll probably like the Great E-Course Adventure like 1,000 times more, because it's us, but we're like
and
characters.
You're doing your thing.
Yeah, and you're working on your course. And it's a step-by-step guide to help you build the greatest course you can possibly imagine. It's fantastic. Tell your friends.
Amazing.
And I think
Bradley,
that's a wrap. Next week,
what's going on next week?
we have another super fabulous guest. This is somebody whose work I've been following for a bunch of years. She's one of the only entrepreneurial writers out there in the marketing realm whose work I follow. Ash Ambridge from the Middle Finger Project is coming on our show next week.
Yeah.
I have asked Ash probably 10 times over the last 2.5 years since launching the Great E-Course Adventure to come on our show. And she's, no, we don't do interviews. No, we don't do interviews. No, we don't do interviews. Finally, she said yes.
Yay!
So, next week is going to be hilarious and really fun for helping you find your writing voice. And there'll probably be a lot of swear words because this lady
would
likes
that be
to
like
cuss.
PG-13? Are we gonna have to
No, it might be 14A to rated R. We'll see.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna be practicing my swear words all week.
Yeah.
Just to
So
prepare for it.
no watching with the kids next week.
Yeah.
Earmuffs, folks. And we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for tuning in.
All right. Bye, everybody.